Our next speaker is a legend in Silicon Valley and at Google. His name is Amit Singhal. I'm sure you've heard of him. He was the man behind search at Google Search. And to understand how do you build a deep technology product, we have no one better to interview him than God in Chief. God in Chief, Vishal Gondal is going to interview Amit Singhal. Come on.
So instead of a fireside chat, we said we will do a walk on the stage.
Yeah,
that would be more apt.
Yeah, it's called a walk and talk.
And please, people who are standing on the left, you can just take, there are some seats on the left over here. You can just kind of get on the thing. But I think it's an absolute pleasure and honor to have Amit over here. Since this is the NASSCOM product conclave, I thought there was no better opportunity for us to hear from the product guru, which I can bet everybody in India and all over the world has used Google. So I think there's a great opportunity for us. So the session will be, I'll be of course talking to Amit, but later on we'll be opening some questions towards the end. So Amit, once again, welcome. I had the pleasure of knowing Amit for quite a few years, and he's also part of my board, so I've got a lot of deep interactions with him. But one question which everybody wants to know is, how did Google happen? I know you were an academic, so how did that academician become a Googler?
So how did Google happen for me? First of all, thank you for having me over here. All the backbenchers over there, their seats over here. Please join in, have a seat. We thought we'd do a walk and talk so that we can talk about all kinds of things. This is how I used to do my one-on-one when I was at Google, because it's just so much more fun. You can walk around with people and talk to them, and that has a very different impact on how you run the team. So we decided, I told Vishal, we are going to do a walk and talk. So Google, look, I was born and raised in India, went to University of Roorkee. It wasn't even an IIT then, and ended up in the US getting a PhD in search. Yes, there is such a thing. And after I got my PhD, I went to Bell Labs. I was a paper publishing academic, published numerous papers. And in 1999, my friend Krishna Bharat, who invented Google News, he and I were having a beer at a conference, academic conference, and he said, dude, I'm going to Google, you should come, you do search. And Krishna was single then. My wife Shilpa and I, we had a child, second one on the way, and I said, Krishna, you are an idiot. You are a single guy. You can take these risks of these stupid startups like Google Schmoogle, okay? I work for AT&T. That's a big company. That'll be there forever, okay? Well, guess who was right, who was wrong? In 2000, tail between my legs, I came and talked to folks at Google, and these people completely blew my mind, okay? They were the best set of people I had ever talked to anywhere. And I used to work at Bell Labs, the most premier research labs in the world, and I'd still say that. And well, then it was obvious to me I need to be there, and that's how I ended up at Google in 2000.
And I think, it's a fascinating story, but this was also a time when, they were like, on last count, 27 other companies doing search. Google was not the first search engine. So how did Google come and capture the market and now become so dominant? What was the challenge at that point of time?
Well, look, the challenge was obvious. It was a small startup. It didn't have enough users. It thought it had the best technology. It didn't have enough users. How do you operate in a market like that? Well, fortunately for that space of search, cost wasn't an issue. It's like you didn't have to undercut anyone on cost. Everything was free. And given that mindset, Google benefited from the fact that all the previous search engine lost focus on search. They thought search was so yesterday, portals were in. Excite used to have a 2-centimeter search window on the top right of their page because they wanted to make money off rest of the crap that they put on their page. And Google's founders, Larry and Sergey, with their infinite focus on search, said search is central, search is the product, and they brought back search and built a search engine which was clearly better than everyone else, and that focus on the user, the focus on search quality, the focus on speed, made Google what it is in the early days.
I still remember Google never had any banner ad on the first page, and people used to laugh at it. So how much of that strategy was driven by salespeople versus the product and tech teams? Because clearly there was something different working at Google versus the 26, 27 other companies.
So look, we had great salespeople. We loved our salespeople, but that's what they did, sales. They didn't build product, thankfully. Okay. So I remember, talking about banner ads, right? Someone was happy to cut a deal with someone which would have, a deal that would have put banner ads on Google's pristine white homepage and made Google $20 million a year. That would have turned that loss-making company into a profit-making company in one deal. But the question that was asked by the product team and everyone else, including the salespeople, was, is this good for our users? And the answer was obviously no. Who wants those dancing monkey ads on our homepage that will slow down the homepage load? So the deal was not a non-starter, but that's the kind of thinking that came from deep technical insights about what would this do to our users and their experience made Google Google.
No, but no, this particular thing, right? I'm sure a lot of companies face this challenge and they have to compromise so many things with consumers telling them to do this and do that, and on a taxi put ads everywhere and so on. So how does this trade-off happen? Is it because of the founders or the investors? I mean, or the product team, whose role was really this to finally say no to that $20 million?
Look, Larry and Sergey were the ultimate decision makers. And so obviously they said no, but there were enough technical folks that basically said, this is stupid, we shouldn't do it. And the other thing you worry about in building companies and in building products is that if you go out there and ask too much, there's that famous saying that Henry Ford had, that if I asked my users what they want, they would have wanted a faster horse. Okay? So you can't really ask too much. You need to have some conviction saying the world would need this, and then you need to go build it. Okay? You can't say, well, let me go ask people what they need and let me go build it, because at that point, all you will get is a faster horse, not a car.
So clearly, right, Google was a startup, you kind of validated this, but that was also the time when Microsoft, Yahoo, you name it, everybody else was pumping in billions of dollars. And from a startup, you had to scale massively. With that scale, a technical team, and I know we are running a tech team ourselves and we are hiring. The question really is, how did you manage this scale? I mean, how did you get all these smart people from all these companies to end up finally working at Google while every other sexy company was there?
Look, few things about Google. As I said, when they interviewed me, I was blown away by the talent. Great people want to work with great people. It's not about the money. At the end of the day, money is hygiene. You only need so much of it. After that, it's not very useful. And great people want intellectual stimulation. They want creativity. Google did one amazing thing. It hired its early employees with very rigorous evaluation, and it hired amazing people like Urs Holzley, Jeff Dean. I talked to these two guys, I'm like, I want to learn from these guys. And no matter if I'm a Bell Labs researcher with 40 publications to my name, these guys clearly know more than I do.
So is it true that there was 27 interviews for every person before they were hired in the tech team?
Well, there were a lot of interviews. I'm not keeping count, but people often complain that Google interviews more than most anyone else. And it's because we can maintain quality. And then, you hire amazing people. They want to then work with amazing people. That's how it snowballs. Then you run into the phase 2 of a company where it's starting to snowball, and you have to make sure that that snowball doesn't run into a pole and explode, right? How do you actually scale that snowball effect? And at Google, I developed a personal philosophy that when you had to manage people, because at the end of the day, when teams get to hundreds and thousands of people, you do have to put some kind of a structure so that things keep working, things don't implode. And one of the principles that I maintained for many, many years at Google was that when given a choice of picking a leader from who was an engineer, who was technical, but somewhat not polished in their people skills, versus someone who was a professional manager, but didn't quite know technology enough, I always went for the first one, which is I made an entire management team out of people who were engineers in my team. I think after 8 years, I hired my first external manager who happened to be a PhD in natural language processing from CMU. So, it's not quite a professional manager, okay? This is what allowed me to build a team where if you worked for someone, you know that your manager knew the problems you are facing, and you can't pull a fast one on your manager because they basically know what you're talking about. You can't bullshit your manager. The other thing that happens when you build a structure like this is the bright, best engineers, if you put someone who doesn't fully understand technology above them, get this visceral internal reaction. Why do I have to explain my stuff to this bozo? He won't understand anyway. Okay? So these are things that are controversial, and by the way, I'm not dissing management. When I left Google, I used to manage a team of thousands of people. I was a full-time manager. But the background from where they come completely changes the texture
did you know,
of a
Amit,
team.
you created a big problem for all the other managers. So today the problem was whenever a company didn't have ideas, they said follow the Google rule. 20% of the time people should do what they want to do. And I know everybody has been told this by their companies. Tell us about that, and tell us, was that really the secret behind all the products coming out of Google?
Look, I wish there was one single secret behind all the products coming out of any company. That 20% time allows people to be creative. They don't think that this is a place they work. They think that this is a place they can play. Okay? It's not a job. It's not just a job. Yes, everyone needs to make a living. Everyone needs to make a sustenance. Don't get me wrong. But if you come into work thinking, oh shit, I'm going to work, that company is screwed. Okay? If your team members come into work saying, yes, I'm going to work, and I'd rather be at work than anywhere else, you've succeeded. And that 20% time was one ingredient of making that place not a place of work, but a place of play. And from play emerges creativity. But creativity in itself is not enough to build out great products. You need systems that support that creativity so that good ideas survive. And those systems are really hard to get right.
So, I mean, clearly, right, I mean, whatever you did, whether it was this 20% rule or getting the best people, it worked. And Google was able to go to every geography where, of course, the government was not involved and become the market leader. And now we are at a very peculiar situation in India where we have the same kind of war where there is Flipkart and Amazon, the global leader, and the Indian challenger. We have Ola and Uber, and there are now several other things happening where all these players are coming to compete with. So one thing, I mean, what did Google do right and what is going on? What do you think? What is your view of this ecosystem which is now becoming the incumbent, the Indian player versus the foreign player?
Look, Google, from early days, we used to say we are a global company, okay? However, it's easier said than done. You know, I can throw out a bunch of motherhood and apple pie statements, but you need to dig deeper to understand how it actually functioned. So an example is early days in the search team, there were a few engineers who were of German descent, you know, who immigrated to the US from Germany. And they said in German, we actually tend to take words and stick them together. So if you have the word tree and the word cake, in German it translates into Baum, Kuchen, and they won't write it with a white space. They'd stick them together and call it Baumkuchen. Now this was a big problem for search because if the user types two words, you have to match it to that joint word, and it didn't work. And in very early days, in 2001, we brought in German decompounding only because we had two people who knew what they were doing. This allowed Google to go to many countries. We spread like wildfire in Europe. Yeah. Before, you know, we had more market share in Europe than we did in the United States, even when we had zero technical people in Europe. This is the advantage Silicon Valley and United States do have. It's a melting pot of multiple cultures. You can find Indians. I used to debug our Hindi queries myself, okay? And I came up with the idea of putting 2 tabs in Hindi belt where you can see a Hindi tab if you want to search in Hindi, because entering in Hindi is really hard, and so on and so forth. So that advantage we had, that allowed us to snowball from there. But you're coming to I've seen the world where the French government funded a French search engine for France. India had something called GOQii, nothing against whoever started it, but it was a dumb idea, okay? And what happens is, like, people get into this, oh, I am in country X, so why don't I build company Y for country X? Just because, it worked in America, it should work here too. Of course it should work here too. That's not the problem. The problem is, what do you bring to the table? Because you're fighting with a global competitor who has a 10-year advantage. The best technology people have learned how users behave, and you'd be surprised how much user behavior is indeed a network effect in building products. So, they know how users behave, they have the best technology, and what you would learn in 3 years, they have learned in the past 10 years. So what do you bring to the table? And I often think about companies in terms of bits and atoms. There are companies that are working in the electrons, bit space. Google's that, right? It's not moving physical atoms in the world. Then there are companies that are moving physical atoms in the world. Uber will be that, Amazon will be that, and so on and so forth. I think it's very hard to go against a global competitor in the electrons, bits space. In atoms, you still stand a chance because there's logistics involved. There is all kinds of work that you need to do to move atoms to the right place. That is, you still stand a chance. But mark my words, India is so big now that all competitors, global competitors, are looking at India. And previously, when the runway was 3 to 8 years for a local company to build escape velocity here, that runway is becoming shorter and shorter because all global companies are looking at India. So therein lies the truth today.
Wow. So we have learned 2 words, atom tech as well as electron tech. So I want to ask you this question because you are, of course, the authority. What is machine learning and all this, big data? I know every company here, or in fact, in some of my pitches also, we have said we are big data analytics and all of that. We use all these jargons. You've been doing this even before these words were invented.
Yes.
So what is your view on companies doing this, and what do you think really can be qualified as big data or machine learning or whatever you call this new thing?
Look, there's a joke in the engineering community that all the suits, the MBAs, use the word synergy, okay? And whenever someone says synergy, they are bullshitting you, okay? They have no idea what's happening, okay? Unfortunately, we in the tech community, by using words like big data and machine learning and so on, are creating a joke on us on the other side. Because what the hell is big data? I don't know, it's big. I'm like, how big? A gigabyte big, a terabyte big, a petabyte big? They're like, when I ask this question, they often say, it's big, not Google big, but it's big. I'm like, what do you really mean by that? So you have to actually dig deeper, and when entrepreneurs come, you can tell who's bullshitting you and who's not, right? That's the joy I have of being a technical person. I'm like, what's big? Big data is clearly capturing something that's happening in the real world. Uber has big data, Ola has big data, Amazon has big data in terms of demand by hour of what people will need. That's one aspect of big data. Do you have users' behavioral data or atom movement data in the real world? Okay? Google knows traffic on Bangalore street better than the Indian government.
We believe that.
Okay? And it's bad. That's the answer, always, okay? And so that's just big data. Then on big data, data in itself is useless, okay? There's a well-known pyramid in information processing. It's called DIKW pyramid. Data leads to information, which leads to knowledge, which leads to wisdom. So all the Android phones moving in the real world is just data. The red and green that you see on your Google map is information. That Bangalore is a congested city is knowledge. And don't fly into Bangalore between 2 p.m. and 10 p.m. is wisdom, okay? And then, you know, how do you convert data into information is where machine learning comes in.
So how do you hire people? Everybody in their resume has these big data. I mean, it's crazy, right? I mean, look at all the companies here, they all are doing big data. And in today's world, when the real challenge is competing and getting these people, how do you recruit? How do you figure this out in the Indian context? I know you've been spending some time in India now. So anything over here, I know how it's done in Silicon Valley. How do you do this in India? Or what is your recommendation on that?
Look, I believe.
Of course, we are hiring.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. You know, look, you know,
Only tech people.
Yeah. And believe me, whoever he hires, a senior person, would have to talk to me first, okay? Because I'm a board member on his company. And it's an amazing team, and I'm always on their case. But more importantly, right, you know, I think India, because of the graduate school education here not being present, we all moved to the US to get a PhD in machine learning, okay? Some of us have come back and become professors here, but largely research is still happening there. And that is another challenge for companies. I'm not giving you a solution, because if I had one, I would have hired 100 people for you already, okay? Or for Vijay. I joined Paytm's board recently, and you know, he needs people too. But I don't have exact solutions, but there are enough people like me who spend either full time here or enough time here that companies here should lean on if they are going to make that hockey stick transition into technology of tomorrow.
Amazing. So quickly, Amit, you moved out of Google last year, and everybody thought you will be again going and doing something big in tech, while now you're of course investing, but your biggest passion has been your foundation. And I know you've been doing something disruptive there too, so would love to tell us about a little bit on that front.
Okay, so look, you know, a selfless person once said that you make a living by what you get, but you make a life by what you give. And I've been fortunate enough that I've made a lot of living. Now, I want to make a life. So we started.
Big round of applause, guys.
Thank you. And you know, many of us have these stories. We come from humble beginnings in India. My great-grandfather used to repair cycle punctures on a roadside. He would take 4 bamboos and a tarpaulin, because he couldn't afford a shop, and he would have that thing that you heated on a koila, on a makeshift heater, to actually fix cycle punctures. That's what he used to do. He didn't have enough money to do anything, and he had 7 kids. One thing that he did was he gave my grandfather a 2-year BA education. And my grandfather became a high school teacher, still not rich enough to buy a car or any such thing, but enough to have a house, clothing, food, and give my father, his son, an engineering education. My dad went to University of Roorkee, graduated in 1958, joined a UP Public Works Department, ended up becoming an engineering chief, the highest ranking bureaucrat in that department. Now you see, 3 generations of education. At this point, I'm not worried about a life of not enough food. Only education did it. So my dad was able to say, son, do whatever you want, don't worry about it, you will be fine. I ended up getting a PhD. I'm standing in front of these amazing people talking to you. Education fundamentally changes the trajectory, not of just one human being, but the next 10 generations. And when I started thinking about education, I'm like, what's happening in India? What's the problem? And one thing you realize, that 70% of India makes less than 20,000 rupees a month. People who work in our homes, my father's home, you know, the person who drives makes 8 to 10,000 rupees. His spouse works doing dishes in 2 houses, making 4,000 from each. If you are willing to work, making 10 to 20,000 rupees in the cities is not a hard thing these days. In that much money, you can buy food, you can afford clothes, and you can even get shelter. But you cannot give your child an amazing education, no matter how talented they are. And a mind is just a beautiful thing to waste. So what we do at Singhal Foundation is we select some of the best and the brightest in the bottom 70%, and then we give them the education that your and my children are getting in the respective city by sending them to the best possible schools in that city. Now imagine, imagine these amazingly bright children whose only way out of the system is education, and they were not getting it because government school, given the population pressure, are failing. They going to a school and sitting next to my child. Imagine how they will change the world. And that's what we are doing. We started with one city in Jodhpur. I left Google end of February. The first class was sitting in classrooms on July 4th, and this year we are expanding to 3 more cities. We take children coming into 6th grade, we give them education all the way to 12th grade, and at the same time, my success metric is if their life was made. And their life is made if they enter an IIT, NIT, CPMT, NIFT, and so on and so forth. So we have built for ourselves test of how many children entered there, and I want to take each and every one of these child and get them through to there.
So early this year, Amit, myself and a few of us went all the way to Everest Base Camp, and I had a lot of time spending a lot of time with Amit, and I realized that he's not just a techie. He has passion for certain other things, mountaineering, music, and cricket. So you have to tell us about all these hobbies of yours.
Look, cricket was passed on to us in our DNA in some way, shape, or form, right? We are Indians, so I follow around the Indian cricket team whenever they go to play, say in Australia or in West Indies. I'll wear my blue India shirt. No one knows who I am. I mix in the crowds. I have a nice beer and so on and so forth, and I have a good time. Occasionally, I would get recognized and invited by, for example, Cricket Australia's CEO invited us, and that day I had to wear a pink shirt because I couldn't wear a blue shirt in midst of Cricket Australia booth where all the Australian cricketers were. So I love cricket. It's all of us do, and I enjoy that. Mountains, I spent all my young life in the foothills and in the mountains, Himalayas, Uttarkashi, Pithoragarh, places most of you have never been to, and mountains are my love. So at the age of 38, I picked up skiing in the US because that gave me an excuse to go to the mountains. So now I ski like crazy and go to the mountains whenever I can, love the mountains. And music is really a way to a person's soul, okay? And that's one thing, right? People say, if you look back, what would you change about your life? And my answer almost always is nothing. I've had a great life that people can't dream of. But I just wish my parents forced me to learn music when I was little. Okay, all children say, no, I don't want to practice. So in our household, we have 2 children. They had no option but to learn music. And early years, you have to force them, practice, do your music homework, this and that. And we are so fortunate that our son just got the love for music, and he is going to go to music school to become a jazz musician.
Wow. So Amit, while Paytm and GOQii and a few other companies have been lucky, how do startups here get your investment and your interest in supporting them?
His question is, what do you invest in? And of course, I invested in you. There must be something. Don't let it get to your head. Otherwise, I'll take care of that. But when it comes to investing, like to me, I'm very blessed. I'm very fortunate. It's not about the money. Okay. What gives me joy? What gives me joy is seeing you guys succeed. What gives me joy is seeing you realize your full potential. Build a company that you really could be building. What gives me joy is seeing Vijay Shekhar Sharma build the company that he could be building. And if I can be a little bit of a stepping stone, I could be a part of kind of your journey and kind of putting some guardrails when you need it, pushing you harder when you need it. That's what gives me joy. So when I invest in companies, things I look for are number one, the founders, right? They have to be fearless. They should not take no for an answer. They have to be fearless. There has to be that twinkle in their eye to change the world. And clearly that's a cliche statement, but you can feel it between people or not. But at the same time, I never fund a Me Too company. Okay? Because what do you bring to the table? You, Vishal, bring a model for the first time which says wearable in itself are not enough. You would need a human to motivate you. Now, that's a hypothesis working very well right now. We still need to grow it and so on and so forth. That's something new that you bring to the table. Vijay Shekhar says, look, Indian payment is going to be different. POS does not work because power is not there, connectivity is not there. I'm going to change the way people pay by simply putting a sticker on a counter. Okay? Now, that's something new, and it's not that, anyone else has done it outside and you're doing a Me Too company. So that's what I look for. I look for entrepreneurs who want to change the world. They are on a journey. They're not looking for an exit anytime. And they bring something to the table that others don't.
Yeah. So I knew you were not going to answer this question directly. So I have a rapid fire question for you, where I'm going to give you some keywords before we open it to the audience. And you have to give the first thing which appears on your mind.
Where thing can be anything or?
Thing, name, company name, person's name.
Okay.
Something we can search on Google and get it on the first page result.
Okay.
So I think my first word is unicorn.
Uber.
Okay. Smart entrepreneur.
Vijay.
Vijay Shekhar. Smart investor.
Chamat.
Chamat is here. Okay, he was outside. Good design.
Apple.
Good tech.
Google.
And overhyped.
Chatbots.
Chatbots. Fantastic. I think Amit did really well. Big round of applause there, guys. So we all know where not to invest. So any questions? We have, I think, time for a few questions. We can take few questions.
We can take questions. If the mic doesn't run to you, I'll happily run into you and you can speak in my mic.
Yep.
Anyone? Questions? First question gets $10.
Via Paytm.
Hello.
Yeah, I think
good evening, sir. So my question is towards the maybe so-called future technology. So how Google look into blockchain technology?
I'm sorry, what?
Blockchain.
How Google looked into blockchain. I mean, forget Google. What is your view on the payment
maybe.
and the blockchain, the whole cryptocurrency thing going on?
Hey, look, I'm not an expert on blockchain, so I can't give you a very intelligent answer. I'm just like, that's, by the way, other thing you should look into entrepreneurs is entrepreneurs who know what they don't know. Very important. Okay, I'm not an expert into it. There are many more experts in this room who you should ask this question. Who knows blockchain here? Okay, talk to your guy sitting next to you, okay?
Next question.
Next question, yeah.
The word that you spoke about, single foundation, that education can change generations. Like it's completely, you guys coming from Google or search, the entire thing moving to online, and you're trying to make this change city by city. So is it you're trying to bring these things online also, or try to get something, coach them online, and because otherwise there will be a very limited audience that you'll be able to reach. Yeah. So that was just an.
Yes, no, I mean, like education right now, as we are doing it, rightly, education in the formative years of a child takes many years. And we have to deal with it in the context of the reality around here. The reality around here is those kids don't have access to internet. Those kids don't have access to smartphones, let alone internet. Even if I gave them a smartphone, they won't know what to do with it. So it's a process. It takes years to educate a child. You cannot short circuit that. You can make it efficient, but you cannot short circuit those years. Learning is a process. And so what we are trying to do is first start that process by getting children into a regular, well understood process, and then enhanced by technology rather than doing it the flipped way.
Great. We have a question there.
Hi. Hi, Amit here.
Yes. Hey.
So thank you for a wonderful, insightful presentation. So first, a quick observation. Our relationship with our parents is such that you crib to your parents, not sending you to a music school. Your son is going to crib that you didn't send him to MIT.
Absolutely.
And he's going to stand here and talk about that one day. And he's going to crypt
Well,
to you.
as
saying,
long
my
as,
father
as
has
long as
billions
it
of
ins-
dollars. He
as
didn't
long
send
as
me
it
to
inspires him to become
exactly.
something, I'm
just
fine
saying,
with
just
it.
an
Yeah.
observation. It's just beautiful. Anyway, the question is, you've been with Google for so many years. Google over the years in search has, because of task completion, because of making sure that people are relevantly getting the results they're looking for, and therefore, the indexing happens according to that. But over the years, Google itself has started giving either recommendations or doing task completion at the search page itself, which sometimes I get the feeling that, Google is competing with everybody, because everybody's searching. So sometimes there is that little conflict which arises on the table that, you want to be a search destination or a better task completion destination, and therefore you have to probably get a little bit more vertically inside in what you are doing and, own the curation of the experience. What are your thoughts on that? Is it like, sometimes competing with the whole world?
I think you're thinking about it in the wrong way, in the competition way. If you put your user hat on and you type the query, what time is it in San Francisco? What would you like to know? You would like to know the answer as opposed to clicking on 3 pages and then typing your query again. You have the answer. This is the focus on the user, focus on the product part. If you guys should all do this too, right? Don't be swayed by sales or external pressures. Figure out what your users want, then you'll succeed.
Amazing.
Okay.
I think last question.
Last
before we
question
move.
over here. Yeah, over here. Anyone? Mike?
Okay, this is the last question.
Yes, this is the last question.
Amit, fascinating talk. Just wondering about you. Over the years, how have you been, or have you stayed connected with India before coming here this year?
Well, India is home. All my family lives here. I came every year. There's no substitute to being physically present. VCs don't work. Video conferences, not the money kind. Okay? They don't work. There's no substitute to being here. I come regularly, and if I was not speaking in my half American English accent and in Hindi, you won't be able to tell that I've been gone 26 years. Okay? I still curse fine in Hindi, by the way. Okay?
So thanks a lot.
Thank you very
thanks
much.
a lot, Amit. Big round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you guys.